I was thinking while we were singing, sometimes one is at loss for words. You don't know how to express yourself properly. And when we were singing all of these songs, don't know where it's amazing sometimes how things are just align and work out. And before we go further, I want to show you an expression of words. There was a accident some time ago. Truckload full of books, 2 years ago actually. A truckload full of copies of Roget's Thesaurus crashed yesterday, losing its entire load. Witnesses were stunned, startled, aghast, taken aback, stupefied, confused, shocked, rattled, paralyzed, and dazed. The driver were lost at words. So, sometimes in my own life, when worshipping the Father and when thinking of things to say, to express my heart, it's impossible for me to do that. And thank you for the worship this morning. It's wonderful to be able to glorify our Father with words that's been thought out, and that sort of shows and illuminates the feeling of your heart and what the emotions is that you are going through. So, and I think this morning when we are working through the Parasha Ki Tetsi, 74 of the 613 laws of the Torah is in today's portion. It presents quite a hefty volume of wisdom for us to walk in, and how we stand and how we worship the Father. This is a lot of the wisdom that the Father has given to Moshe, that he is giving us on how to walk in the ways of righteousness and justice and truth and mercy before our Father, so that we can love one another and that we can glorify our King. This is the purpose of what we are doing. So, the wisdom of Solomon, this is not scripture, this is, well, in some scriptures is included, but not in the canon that we have. But just as a sort of a summary of what we are saying to each other today, chapter 1 says, love righteousness, all you who are judges of the earth. Remember, James spoke about it last week. Who are the judges of the earth? So it is love righteousness, all you who are judges of the earth. Think of Adonai with a good mind. Seek him in singleness of heart, because he is found by those who don't put him to test, and is manifested to those who trust him. You need to visualize the words for me to get the full impact of it. For crooked thoughts separate from God. His power convicts when it is tested, and exposes the foolish. Because wisdom will not enter into a soul that devises evil, nor dwell in a body that is enslaved by sin. For a Holy Spirit of discipline will flee deceit, and will depart from thoughts that are without understanding, and will be ashamed when unrighteousness has come in. So this is this wisdom of Solomon speaks about our responsibility and how we live in the sight of our Father. And we are in the month of Elul. Remember, this is the month of Elul. Ani ledodi v'dodi. This is the month where we dedicate ourselves before the Father, and we walk in a repentative attitude, trying to see the things that are keeping us from full entry into his presence as we should. And while we were singing, Sian confirmed that it is we've got a conviction of who our Messiah is. Knowing that he is the one, and Chris prayed about this at the end, he is the one that was our deliverer, the one who came to save us, to set us free from our bondage and death, and brought us into a covenantal relationship with our Father. So in the light of the wisdom of Solomon, is what is our responsibilities in these days? So today's story builds on some ideas that we have found over the past weeks. And Cian spoke about the portion that included the Shema, actually. So, and have I got it there? Oh, I don't. And so it started with our responsibility to hear and do. Okay, so that's where our covenantal relationships start. It is when we hear the Father's call and we act accordingly, then He will, re'eh, 2 weeks ago we spoke about re'eh, is I set before you, see what I've set before you, blessing and curse. I set the word before you, and the way we respond to the word, the wisdom that is contained in it, it will put us on a path towards blessing, it will put us a path towards discipline. Our Father has got full authority, and whatever we do have got no impact in the course of the future. It is, He's got the full authority in our lives. If we walk contrary to His word, we will be set on a course to discipline and reproof. If we walk with Him, obedient to His works, to His words, we will receive blessing. That's our choice. Last week, James spoke about the judges and the officers. The word there that links the whole lot is the word Natan. And the word Natan is the gift that the Father gives us. He gives us the word. Our responsibility is how do we respond to His word and how do we walk in it. Last week, when James spoke about judges and the Shoftim, the judges and officers, we see that we are gifting in our gates judges and officers that are set over us, so that we as a community can walk together in the blessing that the Father has for us. So if we've got good judges and officers, we will walk in the blessing. If we don't have good judges and officers, we will walk in discipline and reproof from the Father. And things will go not exactly as He planned. Today again we see the same word, the giving, Natan. In Deuteronomy 26:1 it says, "And it shall be when you come into the land which Adonai your Elohim is giving you, Natan, as an inheritance, and you will possess and dwell in it." So the gift that the Father has given us is the dwelling of His nation in a land that is His. So as we start in the Shema, it's revealed to us in Re'eh how we should walk and our responsibility and our response should be. And then as we do so individually and as a group together, judges and officers come to our midst to help and guide us in the truth of the word, so that when we live into the land, when we live in the land that our Father is giving us, it will be a blessing. It will be an inheritance for us that goes into blessing. A little bit later in this parasha, a little bit earlier actually, when where it starts out. Sorry, those two are changed around. It says, when you go out, once we live in this land, when you go out to fight against your enemies, remember now we are living in a land that the Father has gifted to us. And as someone approaches, it's an enemy, and the Father is with us. He says, Adonai your Elohim will give, as a gift, will give them into your hand, and you shall take them captive. So, what do we do with that enemy? What is the purpose of them being gifted into our hands? What is our responsibility towards the enemy? What do we do? So, I think the way that we respond to the enemy around us, to those that we perceive as being the enemy, speaks about where our hearts are. Remember, the word is full of the way that we should respond towards the enemy. And I think in this process, our responsibility is to be continually overwhelmed with the goodness and the mercy and the kindness and the glory of our Heavenly Father. Remember what Romans 5 says, Romans 5:8? It says that the Father reached out to us in compassion while we were still His enemies. You know? So remember, at a stage, you and I were the enemies of God. But He reached out to us and He drew us into a covenantal relationship. And I think for us the challenge is to be continually and every day be in awe of His involvement, of His presence with our lives. Because if we become accustomed to His presence, remember Israel in the wilderness? they had the Shekhinah in the center of the camp. When you open the tent door in the morning, you're welcomed by the Shekhinah of your Father. When you close your tent door at night, the fire column is with you. Yet in the midst of that, of the Father's expression in their lives, they strayed and they walked away from Him. And it's because we grow accustomed to the Father's involvement in our lives. And you're not overwhelmed with His awe and His presence. So I think the challenge for us in this month of Elul, while it is said that the King is in the field, preparing us for Yom Teruah in 2 weeks, it is the challenge is, are we passionate for the glory of the Father in our midst? And what does it mean to glorify the glory of the Father in our midst? So, I think it boils down to this thing, and that is, how effective are we? How effective are we in shining the light of the Word, the light of the kingdom, to the people around us? And we can only shine the light of the kingdom to the people around us when the altar of your heart is burning. When the Ruach is in your heart and in your life, active, and it's displayed to the people, to your immediate family first, and the people around you, and to the community that you're involved. If the Ruach is within you, and the light of the Word is in your life, then you can shine the light to the people around you. You can be the salt that the Word speaks about. And in doing so, we must remember and know that we are not primarily here for our own benefit. If you are a light, Yeshua said, He is the light of the world. Likewise, we are a reflection of His light. Then shining the light is not for our benefit. It is for the people around us, the benefit that we have for the community. So if that is the case, being a light to the world and salt to the people around, salt to whatever happens around us, not here for our own benefit, what do we do when the enemies are given into our hand? If we are people that's got the presence of the Father as we do, residing within us, we are a tabernacle of Adonai, what do we do? Remember what Yeshua said in Matthew 5:44, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Okay? That's the one way to go. Remember, I set before you life and death. You choose, blessing or curse. So in today's Torah portion, Deuteronomy 26 verse 1, it starts describing to us a war. When you are at war, I will give your enemies into your hand, the Father says. But then we get distracted. This is what happens. Remember, the war, if we are in the kingdom, the war is for the benefit of the kingdom. Not for individual benefit, it is for the benefit of the kingdom. That's why we are involved in a war. And today's Torah portion speaks about when we take captives that we want to take back. What will be the primary purpose for us to take captives and take them back into the land? What is the purpose of that? What do you think? It's labor. Yes, it's labor. It is. Remember, Israel as a community grew tremendously by taking captives and making them part of Israel, of the nation. So, suddenly you get distracted by something beautiful around you. And when you see a woman of beautiful form, the Torah says, and you make her your own because of the passion that you might have, then what the word says, the next portion is, it will end in misery, it will turn into an unloved wife. How do we respond to a woman that is around us, beautiful and pretty? When you take her home, what does the word say? What shall we do? You what? I think I agree. You clip her nails, you trim her hair quite short, you remove her makeup, you take off all the beautiful stuff that women usually wear to war. I don't know, it says that you should take a beautiful dress off, high-heeled shoes, makeup, all the rest of the stuff, and make her ordinary. Let her live in your house for a month. Let her weep and mourn for her mummy and daddy, where she comes from, and you will get to know her a little bit, and you'll make a rational decision what to do with the blessing that you now have. It's not a decision of passion anymore. It becomes a rational decision. So, and then, if you really want to, then make her your wife. But the word continues, and this is just the aspects of the word as it follows, as we read it. Starts with taking captives and taking a woman beautiful of form, and then if you do transgress and make the war about your own benefit, and lose your focus of what the war was about in the first place, then it will end in misery, being an unloved wife. And the fruit of this union will rebel. And you know what happens to a rebellious son in this portion of the Torah? It will be taken out into the gates, and the community will stone the son. And the next portion is speaking about a cursed corpse and contaminated land. So if we are focused, the Father has given us an inheritance, we're living in the land, we are worshipping Him in spirit and in truth, and the land is a blessing, the enemy approaches and you lose focus. Then what happens is sin enters your heart and it results in death. And when the land is contaminated, what happens to the Shekhinah of the Father? It starts withdrawing, as we saw. So, there's a little bit of grace in this story, because it says, although you might have lost your focus, and you have made this woman yours, and it does end in misery with an unloved wife, what do you do then? You take it to the elders. And when you take it to the elders, the land will not be contaminated, because the problem will be dealt with. So there is, teshuvah has been made here. What would have happened when the rebellious son would not be taken to the elders and not go through the process? The land will be contaminated. And the nation, the greater family, would be involved and walk with you in this path. So what we do in our lives, our purpose, and what we sang about this morning as well, is that in our daily living, Psalm 89 verse 14 comes into play. It says, righteousness and justice, right ruling, are the foundation of your throne. Kindness and truth go before your face. So the Father calls us to live a life of righteousness and justice. That's what we saw in the last two Torah portions. And if we apply righteousness and justice to our lives, the word for foundation is makon. It is the habitation, the living place, the place where the throne of the Father resides. So then your tabernacle, the place where you live your life, are becoming a habitation of His throne. And as we approach the Father in that manner, then kindness and truth goes before the face of the Father, and you will express it in your life. And what happens if you meet someone that doesn't share your opinion or your convictions? Do you act with him as an enemy, or you draw him in? The best way to make an enemy part of your nation is to draw him in, and so that he does not stand against you as an enemy anymore, but next to you, worshipping the God of Israel and becoming part of the nation. That's the best way to treat an enemy. So, our calling is to build a foundation or a habitation of a kingdom-centered life or a kingdom-centered society in our lives. So if we live our lives in a way that produces a scent of the kingdom, then remember the testimony when Joshua and the nation was approaching Canaan at the time? Then the testimony was the nation, Jericho, was in fear because they heard that the God of the universe was with you, and they were afraid. So, and the lady involved turned her life around, and she became one of their ancestors in the line of David. So, first, it happens in our lives. If you have a kingdom scent in your life, then I live it out in my private family. My family lives it out in this community, and this community influences the greater community, so that as we function together and we live and move together, eventually our town, our province, our nation will be engulfed by the presence of our Father. That is discipleship, and that is evangelization. It is to influence people around us with your lifestyle and the testimony that you live in. It's not a one-time message. It is a lifestyle of introducing the King to the people around us. And so we enlarge our kingdom influence in every area of our being. Every place that we put our foot, our Father will give to us. If righteousness and justice are the habitation of His throne in your life and in my life, then together we can express the kindness and the truth that the Father has given to us while we are seeking His face. In our life, as we're walking, we are being transformed into the image of the Son, into the image of Messiah. But we only do so when we seek His face, and we are trying to emulate, as a disciple, the life of our King. So everything we do, everything we live and understand and express is those two things. It is creating an environment, a space in your life as a tabernacle where the Spirit of our Father can reside and be comfortable in. That the land is not contaminated. If you read through today's Torah portion, it mainly goes about this. This is the main topic. Is how do we live a life as a community so that the Spirit of our Father will be comfortable in our presence? No contamination, no idolatry, no. Even toilet behavior is spoken to, so that the camp will not be defiled, that the presence of the Father can reside in our midst. Every facet of our lives involves living righteously and in justice. So, Psalm 89 says, if we do those things, if we live in this manner, with this mindset, being overwhelmed with the presence of the Father in our lives, then blessed are the people who know the teruah that's walking in the light of your face, your Father. So we are in 2 weeks, we are starting the fall festivals. We are starting the day of Yom Teruah. It says, and the word therefore blessed are not the word barach that we normally expect. It is the word ashrei. The words are ashrei ha'am. Blessed is the nation. Happy, actually, is the nation. Happy is the nation. Yadecha, Teruah, Yotevavhei in the Beor, Panaim, Holecha. So it is, blessed are the people who know the teruah, the call to repentance, the call to teshuvah, the call to live a life in purity as we are living in His presence, seeking His face together. So, remember verse 15 cannot be in isolation. Verse 15 is a result of verse 14. We cannot come to the festivals unprepared. We cannot come to the festivals proclaiming our God to be high and lifted up. We sang about this morning. This is exactly what we sang about this morning. We cannot proclaim those things if our lives are not prepared. And these 40 days leading up to Yom Kippur as the days of Teshuvah, the days of repentance, preparing our lives so that we together as a company, as a community, can walk in the light of His face. And I just want to remind myself and you what we sang this morning. We started off with singing of the splendor of the King. How great is our Yah. Gadol Elohai, above all else. Above all power of wisdom and above all kingdom, our Father is exalted. So, the throne of our Father resides in your life and in my life. And I don't know if we are always aware of that fact. We walk around and we get angry, we kick the dog. I've got a puppy. I tend not to do that, but I sometimes feel like it, I must say. And that's only because we forget the focus of what and who resides in our lives. Isaiah 6:1, and this is where I want to go to is in the life of Israel, a couple of times the Father has revealed himself to Israel, testing the response. In Exodus 19, he says, if you will hear my voice, obey my commandments, then you will become an Am Segula, a set-apart people in my presence. So the Father comes down on Mount Sinai, presents himself to the nation. The nation stands back. First the Father says, put a boundary stone around the mountain and says, nobody comes running after me. What is the response? The nation stands back. They don't even approach. They take a step backwards. Because they are overwhelmed with the presence and the fear of Adonai. And it actually started a while ago. It started at Moses. Started with Moses coming to the fiery bush, to the burning bush. And as he was walking up that same mountain, his eye caught a bush burning, and as he looked and turned aside, he saw a bush burning, and he thought he must approach this because it's an uncommon vision. And as he walked towards this bush, the voice of our Father said to him, stop, take off your shoes, you're on set-apart ground. So he stopped, took off his shoes, and they fell on his face. And so the next time that they get to that same mountain, the Father prepares the nation for the same experience. And the nation stands back. So in Isaiah 6, it says, one time before that actually, now that I come to think of it, let's just go back there. Sorry, I don't want you to read it and get distracted. One time before Moses even took the nation to the mountain, there was another revelation of the Father, of His glory and His presence in the midst of a nation. Can you think where? Can you get me a t-shirt, please, Hanley? In Pharaoh, in Egypt land. Remember, the Father said to the nation of Egypt, you don't know me? I will show myself to you. Let me introduce myself to you. What happened to the nation of Egypt? They hardened their hearts, and they withdrew from the revelation that the Father brought in their midst. They hardened themselves, and they became part of the judgment. Thank you. So then Moses happened. Then Isaiah 6:1. Isaiah 6:1. In the year that the sovereign Josiah died. Think about, and as we read this, think about this, what it actually means. What's in the words? Visualize the words that we are speaking. What is the nation of Israel experiencing? King Josiah died. What do they experience? Brokenness, heartache. The king is dead. So in that moment, the Father gives a vision to Isaiah. Yeshayahu Hanavi, Isaiah the prophet. I saw Yotevafe sitting on a throne. The king is dead. Our Father lives. There's hope. Don't worry. Our Father lives. Although the earthly manifestation of the one that He has appointed to guide us, the officers, the judges, has now deceased, our Father in His goodness and mercy is still with us. He lives. And you know what? He's not working somewhere. He is not seen walking down the road. He's not seen doing anything. He's Shevet on a throne. He sits where the word Shabbat comes from. He sits in peace on the throne, ruling, judging. And it's not any throne, it is a throne high and lifted up. It is a throne, it's not a throne of an earthly kingdom, it is one that's exalted. It shows the glory and the wonder of our Father, His manifest presence. And while He is sitting on the throne, as His presence fills the earth with His glory, the train of His robe filled the temple. So this is a presentation to Isaiah the same one that presented himself to Israel on Mount Sinai. And he says, this is the reality of my being in your midst. Will you accept me? So above it, the it being the temple, because his train filled the temple. So above the temple was the seraphim stationed above the temple. And what do they look like? What did they look like? Each had six wings. Wings over masking its face, closing its face, one closing his legs, feet, and with two he flew. So even the seraphim, probably the supreme creation beings in the presence of our Father, didn't dare to look at him. You know? Because their eyes were closed at the presence of the Father. They didn't put their foot on the sea of glass in His presence, because their feet were humbled, were closed. So, and it's the same Adonai, the same Yotevavhe that resides in our lives. You know? But when we go out to war and we see a pretty girl, we get distracted. We see something, an appointment in a business, we see money, we see a deal, we see whatever distracts you in life. It's just an image. But while our Father, who is worshipped by the seraphim, resides in your life and my life, I think sometimes we forget about the glory of His presence. And the one cried to the other and said, Holy, holy, holy is Adonai Yotevavhe Tzevaot. What fills the earth? His holiness. They cry out, Holy, holy, holy. What fills the earth? His glory fills the earth. Because His glory is a manifestation of His holiness. That's what fills the earth. So, when the seraphim cries out, Kadosh, 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 know what happens? The posts of the door were shaken by the voice of the seraph that cried out. It's quite a resilient door. They're still doing it. It's still shaking. Stays in place. Think about the impact that these beings have. When they cry out and the door of the house, of the Hekel, it says, shakes, what happens to the earth? The earth shakes. What shaking do we see in the earth today? The earth is being shaken. And when they cry out, Kadosh, 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 whatever resists the holiness of our Father is being shaken. So if something is shaken, don't worry. Don't get distracted. Don't look at fear or anything else that will distract you. Focus on the Father, because it's Him alone that we worship. And Isaiah says, woe to me. It's always an interesting word to me. Woe to me. It's like, sure. I was doing some horse riding in the past, and you can either be heavy on woe or go. My daughter was heavy on go. I was heavy on woe. And so, stop immediately. That's what it means. I said, woe to me, for I am undone. I'm bursting at the seams, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, Yotevavhe Tzevaot. So Isaiah knows the effect of being in the presence of one that has cried, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And one of the seraphim flew to me, and having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken from the altar, he touched my mouth with it, and see, this has touched your mouth. I think Isaiah knows. But see, this has touched your mouth, for your crookedness is taken away, and your sin has been atoned for. Covered, atoned. Does that remind you of anything? Check this out. In Numbers 21:6 it says, and Yotevavhe sent Nachash Seraph, the seraphim. He sent fiery snakes, like the fiery beings. He sent the two words for fiery serpents, that's Seraph and that is Nachash, among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. So when you respond in rebellion against our Father, then judgment follows. You remember? See, I set before you a life of blessing and of curse. Your choice. And Moshe made a bronze serpent, a fiery serpent, one that resembles the seraphim, and put it on a pole. And it came to be, if a Nachash, a serpent, bitten anyone, and he looked at the bronze serpent, he was atoned for. He lived. So what we've seen in these verses, was a heavenly perspective of what we are seeing here. Isaiah 6 verse 8. The vision continues and it says, and I heard the voice of Yotevavhe saying, whom do I send? Remember where Isaiah is right now. Isaiah came as someone that laid his life before the Father and said, I am available. And when he stood before the Father, he realized in whose presence he is. And he says, I am undone, I am unclean. He was touched by a coal from the altar. He was atoned for. Now, he says, the Father says, whom do I send and who will go for us? And Yeshayahu said, here am I, Hineni, send me. Now he is ready. He has been touched and atoned for. He said, go, and you shall say to this people, hearing you do not hear, you do not shema. You do not, the word is binah, you do not know how to take the building blocks of the word and construct them in a way so that your life will have understanding. You do not understand. You do not re'eh. Remember 2 weeks ago? You do not see. And you do not yada. You do not have intimate knowledge of me. That is what he says to the people. So what is the solution to this problem? Go and read the Torah. Turn back. Make teshuvah. Come back to me. So the problem is that they've gone too far. And the Father says to Isaiah, make the heart of this people fat, and their ears kavod, heavy. That's the same word, but it's got a positive and a negative meaning. It can be glorious, or it can be blunt and of no function. So make the heart of this people fat and the ears heavy, and shut their eyes, they won't see, and hear with their ears, they won't shema, they won't re'eh, and they will have no understanding, and they shall turn, so that if they would have had understanding and saw and heard, then they would have turned teshuvah, repented, and be healed. But they need to go into the wilderness for a period of time, so that they can learn that I am the one that's their healer, I am the one that's their covenant partner, and bring them back. Then I said, Yesaiah asks, he says, Adonai, until when? And he answers, until the cities are laid waste and without inhabitant, and the houses are without a man, and the land is laid waste, a ruin. Did this happen in Isaiah's life? It happened with the first Babylonian exile. And Adonai has removed men far away, and the forsaken places be many in the midst of the land. But still, there is a 10th part in it. There is a remnant in the land. And it shall again be for a burning. The word for burning is the word for eating, destruction. It's again, even after this exile that we've just read about, this one here. Until when? He answered, until the cities are laid waste. That's the first exile. Again there will be an exile. There will again be for a eating, for a burning, like a terebinth and an oak tree, whose stump remains when it's cut down. But no, even after the second exile, the set-apart seed is still in the stump. Remember the tree, the oak tree has been cut down. The stump remains, although everything has been desolated. So, do you know who's the prophecy of that set-apart seed in the stump? We'll get to that. The problem, what happened to them, the problem that Israel experienced, why they went into this exile, 2 exiles actually, why they had to go into that, is because they didn't realize that even a small drifting away from the light, even if we get distracted by anything in this world, while we think we're in covenant relationship with our Father and everything goes well, when we get distracted and our hearts turn from Him, that a seed of unrighteousness is planted in our hearts and it starts bearing fruit. And we withdraw from the presence of the Father gradually, slowly, we don't even know it. When we see it, we're starting to reap the fruits of it. So, because the problem with sin, this ra is evil. It says if evil is allowed to grow from seed until full growth, its eventual fruit will be death. Then, in this Torah portion of today, it says, if evil is allowed, it will turn into stubbornness. Remember the sun? It will turn into stubbornness. The definition of stubbornness is when you determine to have your own way. We're sitting in a group, we're sitting in a community, and we decide to go in one direction that we feel, and we can see that this is the way that we should go, and you say we are going that way. Because you want to go your own way and do your own will and act as you please, no matter what everyone else's opinion is. So, it starts at Ra, it grows, because that comes from the same word as that. And then even the same word grows into rebellion. It's when you start influencing other people to walk with you in that same way. To act defiantly and to rebel and to disobey in a greater manner. And I think today in the world, look around us, the amount of rebelliousness that's taking place in the world today is just I think it's a visual symbol of where people's hearts are found at the moment. The way out of that, though, is if you find yourself, if a seed is in your heart, planted in your heart, that you get unrighteousness as part of your thought patterns, etc., the way that we can deal with that is the word says, take captive of that thought that is set up against righteousness and justice, so that we can come back and mercy and truth can have a cleansing effect in your life. And we can reflect the goodness and the mercy and the justice and the righteousness of the King. That's the way back. So if you have emotions, if you have actions, if you've got certain behaviors in your life that you can see that the Word doesn't support, I urge you to turn around and submit our lives to the King, to the Word. Because Yeshua is the living Word. And if we want to be disciples of Yeshua, we need to walk and live the life He lived. So building on Isaiah 6, we find in John, this is now at the time of when Messiah is at the end of His earthly life. He says, now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world shall be cast out. And if I am lifted up from the earth, remember this, the copper snake? If I am lifted up from the earth, I shall draw all men unto myself. This he said, signifying by what death he is about to die. And the crowd answered him, we have heard out of the Torah that the Messiah remains forever. And how do you say the Son of Man shall be lifted up? Who is the son of Adam then? And this is the problem when we read the Torah in isolation and don't read it as part of the complete picture, is that we don't understand the message of the Word. That's why the full testimony and the full counsel of the Father is necessary for us to live in. Yeshua therefore answered them and said, a little while the light is with you, and while you have the light, walk in it, lest the darkness overtake you. And he who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. And this is where Israel was in the time of Isaiah, is rejecting even the glory of our Father, because they were walking in such darkness that they didn't even realize it. while you have the light, believe in the light so that you become sons of the light. This word Yeshua spoke and went off hidden from them. But though he had done many signs before them, they did not believe in him still. And we are getting to a place. The one song that we sang this morning is, let me just remind you of a song that we sang. It is the above all power and above all wisdom. And we go through glorifying the Father as being the one who contains all power and all wisdom, the one that we worship. And then we start singing about Yeshua, the one that is crucified for us. And the problem with Israel was that they firstly turned away from the glory and the manifest presence of the Father, as showed to them in all the examples. And then when the Father came to them in his manifest presence even, and he introduced himself to them, and they turned around and walked away, he sent his Son, as Colossians says, in the form of man, to present himself as a servant, so that as a servant they would accept him in their lives. But the testimony is, but though he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him. That a word of the prophet Yeshayahu, that we just read, might be filled, which he spoke. Yotevavai, who has believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Adonai been revealed? The arm of Adonai is his strength, his glory, his power, even in the last days in Yeshua's life. Because of this, they were unable to believe. Because again, the prophet Isaiah said, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, so that they should not see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I will heal them. And Isaiah said this. He said this when he saw the esteem. Remember the seraphim? Remember the throne of our Father? This is when he spoke those words. Isaiah 53 paints the other side of the picture. Remember we read in John 12 now, who has believed our report? Remember? This is where John gets this from. He says, who has believed our report, and to whom was the arm of Adonai revealed? For he grew up before him as a tender plant. You remember the stump that was cut down in Isaiah? You remember what you read? He grew up before them as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground, with no form or splendor that we should look upon him, no appearance that we should desire him. Despised and rejected by man, a man of pains, knowing sickness, and as one from whom the face is hidden, being despised, we did not consider him. So even when the Father presented himself after he's been rejected in his glorious, wonder, manifest presence, and his Son came, we did not consider him. And this is probably our challenge as well. It's in our lives, we are living tabernacles. Remember? We are living tabernacles. And how do we reflect the glory, the Father's holiness, his set-apartness? How do we esteem his authority over our lives and the lives of our community? All the aspects of his manifest presence. Is this what we are dwelling on and building our lives on the foundation that we build our lives? First, he was presented in that glorious form by Isaiah, and now, even as a servant, he was rejected. And I think this is the world's problem, and this is why we are going through a time of shaking. The world turned away from him in the days gone by. The world has turned and is turning away from him now as we speak. And how do we present the holiness of our Father? Remember, if we get together, what we say. Our purpose here today, our Father, is to glorify your name. That's our purpose, is to glorify your name. How can we glorify the Father's name? Is through living a set-apart life. Holiness is the glory of our Father concealed in your life. So if you experience the glory, if we look at Isaiah 6 and we see the glory of the Father and it fills our hearts with awe and wonder, we behold His glory. To sit a glimpse. There were 7 points in that portion that are a glimpse of His glory. If we look at that and it fills our hearts and it's to the brim, and we live a life, it convicts us and helps us, encourage us to walk a life that the Torah has put some boundary stones for us so that we can walk in it. Then we're walking on the set-apart life that the Father is for us because we have a glimpse of His glory. And therefore, in this little road that we are walking, some little aspects of His glory filter off to the people around us. Because as we walk in this life of set aparted to the Father, little bitties of glory filters off to the people around us. And the challenge is for us to, as a community, to live together in unity so that His glory can be shown more and more and more, so that we can become a shining light to our neighbors. And as we do so together, we must remember that this is only... Remember the last portion of Psalm 89, verse 14, verse 15, it says, when we walk together in righteousness and judgment, we will seek His face through His gracious provision as a covenantal relationship in our lives. So as we seek His face together in our build up to the feast cycle of Sukkot, what do we do with our enemies? How do we live our lives so that the enemies of the Father is turned into His friends? Now, do we live out in judgment, looking down on certain people, other people around us, because we've got knowledge that they don't have, or whatever? It's a challenge for us to live in humbleness, knowing full well that we were slaves and we were sinners, and now, because of our Father's gracious expression in our lives, we are part of His covenantal family. You know? We are building up to a time where we can celebrate our Father's goodness and His atonement that He has brought through His Son. And this will be our testimony in the people around us as years for time to come. Our desire is to glorify His name, and I trust that in these days, as we hear the story of the cherubim, the burning ones, the fiery ones that are stationed above the throne and turning and shouting, holy, 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 that conviction and that passion to declare the glory and the holiness of our Father will be our portion in these days as we are drawing nearer and nearer to the day of trumpets. Because when the trumpet starts blowing at Yom Teruah, we've got 10 days. Remember the prophetic significance of these days. When the day of trumpets are blown, when the day of trumpets come and the trumpets are blown, then we are entering the dire straits. The days that are known as the days of tribulation. And the only way for us to remain a shining light in the Father's presence is to be focused on His righteousness, on His justice, knowing that we are part of the covenantal family through what Messiah has done for us on the cross. Drew us in while we were still His enemies. And now we experience His grace and His wonder. What is our response? How do we deal with our enemies? Our desire is to glorify a name. You know, when Messiah returns, what will His coat be like? What will His coat, His robe be like? It says dipped in blood. Remember? Whose blood, by the way? His own blood. When He presents Himself to His enemies, He says, remember this blood. Yeah. So let's together build a habitation for His holiness in our midst, trusting Him for a revelation of His glory, so that we can get a picture of Isaiah 6 in our hearts, so that we can wake up in the morning and be overwhelmed with who He is. Because only from that perspective we can walk this path in sincerity and in truth. That's only, if our Father doesn't do it for us in our lives by sending His Ruach into His Spirit into our lives, so that the altars of our hearts are fired up, and that flame that we present ourselves in Romans 12:2 is burning high, and that it's honoring the Father with every aspect of our lives, we've got a problem. That's our challenge. Can we sing that song again? Daai lekker een. Come, let's think of the words. That one, above all power. Can we sing that one again? If we sing that, when we sing that song, remember this, the world has looked at, even Israel has looked at the manifestation of the Father's glory and turned away. Looked at the message of His Son coming to live His life, drawing people unto Him, turned away. As messengers of the kingdom, as judges and messengers of the kingdom, how can we make a difference? What needs to change in our lives so that we can look at His wisdom, His power, make a change in our lives so that we can be effective in the kingdom, drawing all men unto our Father. Let's sing it. Let's stand and sing that song.
Above all power, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man. You were there before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, laid behind a stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all, above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man. You were there before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, laid behind a stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground, you took the fall and thought of me above all. Crucified, laid behind the stone, left to die, rejected and alone. Like a rose trampled on the ground, he took the fall and thought of me above all, and thought of me above all, and thought of me above all.
Father, in these days, may this be our confession, is that we know that you thought of me above all. Father, help us to get a picture and a glimpse of your thoughts and your experience, and showing and reaching out to us in your glory and in your wonder, showing us your majesty. Father, doing everything for us to come into covenantal relationship with you. And now that we are, Father, that help us to be overwhelmed with awe, with the awe of your presence. Father, send your Ruach into our lives so that we can live a life that resembles your righteousness and your justice. Father, so that grace and truth we can live out seeking your face. Help us in these days as we prepare our hearts for Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, for Sukkot. It shows your coming and your involvement in the affairs of humanity and drawing us closer to you. Father, in these days, help us in our prayer life, in our studying of your word. Lead us with your Spirit, Father, so that the things that are set up against you in our own lives, in our community, can be dealt with, and that we can draw closer to you, that we can be a true reflection of your light, and that people will be drawn unto you because of the testimony that who you are in our lives. Thank you for reaching out to us with all means to draw us close. Father, we want to bow down before you today and say, Father, thank you for sending your Son, Yeshua. Thank you that you have done everything possible to give us the opportunity to enter into relationship with you. Today, Father, we're standing before you and looking at all the gifts that you have given us. Realize that you mean business with us. Help us to mean business with you. Help us, Father, because on our own we can't do it. We are distracted by all things around us. Help us to have singular focus and vision on you and to live a life worthy of the King. We thank you and we praise you in your name. Thank you, Father. We praise you. Amen.